For someone who's never been to therapy before, we've started to explain therapy kind of like a tree.
So don't give up.
What happened to you happened over time, right?
Uh-huh. Hi everyone, and welcome to Conversational Lounge Media. I am your host, Trudy Carlson, and I have an amazing guest today, and I cannot wait to have her introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does, and just introduce this topic. As you know, this past month was Mental Health Awareness Month. We believe that this topic is really important, and I don't think it needs to be just limited to 1 month. This is a conversation that needs to continue in our community. It needs to continue in our society to a point where we feel comfortable to express ourselves, and we feel comfortable to have this conversation and even identify who our professionals are, who our support group are, and just, be bold and share our own stories. So without further ado, I will not monopolize the topic. I will invite Sarah to introduce herself. And Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to accept this invitation and to talk with all of you about mental health. I'm Sarah Van Gorp, and I currently work at Lutheran Services in Iowa as a mental health therapist, and also to help develop and build programs that expand access to mental health supports in our community in a culturally hospitable way.
Mm-hmm.
So we focus on mental health for immigrants and refugees. And so I have a couple of therapists that work with immigrants and refugees and want to help expand access for the communities that right now we don't have a specific culturally hospitable service that's targeted for immigrants and refugees. And so that's what we want to do, where other states have been doing this for multiple years.
Wow, that is amazing work. And then for the immigrants and refugees, over here, moving away from the topic, but is it worldwide refugees, or is it a specific target area that you're focusing on?
So Lutheran Services in Iowa has a group of services that target providing support for people who've recently moved to the community. Mm-hmm. And so for all of the services that we provide in this area, there's different eligibility. So for some, there's a specific visa that someone has to come with based on the funding. Mm-hmm. But for this mental health support with therapy, we're mostly talking about people who are looking for therapy, can't connect with other therapists because of the approach that they're using, or it's not culturally understood in that way. And so we're trying to have something that blends approaches for someone to understand more about what the experience is coming into the United States, for therapists to understand that so that they can help advocate for that person, for them to know more about someone's culture so that they can understand what someone's saying when they say that they're really having a difficult time or their family doesn't understand.
Yes. Wow. I applaud you, because I feel like in our society especially coming from a different country to a different country where the culture is already different, so you have that dealing with, but you also have your own baggage that you brought from home. Maybe it wasn't, a conducive environment, and you're going through that, and sometimes you might not be able to articulate that to someone else, but then having someone like you as a channel in between.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine how much of a lift that's providing.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this amazing questions that I wrote for you. I wanted to really make sure I ask you a lot of questions because, hey, not every day do I get to hang out around a professional who is, well-versed in a topic. So one of the things that I wanted to know is, why do you think it's important for us as a society to talk about mental health?
So I wanted to point out, because not very many people realize that even in the United States, the topic of mental health has had a lot of stigma. And only recently, maybe a couple of decades, if I'm being generous, is the conversation about mental health really starting to be more open, less stigma, less judgment around it. And some people would say that there's still a lot of judgment and stigma. That people, even if they've lived in Des Moines for their whole entire life and their family has lived in Des Moines for, ancestors before that, may not be open to talking about mental health. So even around the community, we still have a lot of stigma. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's been a lot more openness since the COVID pandemic, because people have struggled a lot more. And there's been a lot more informal supports and informal apps and discussions about how to stay well and healthy. So what professionals would say is that in serving lots of people and studying mental health and studying emotions and studying the brain, talking about mental health, talking about the struggles, talking about the experiences, actually changes the experience. So where you have secrets, where you have hiding, people struggle a lot more. Their symptoms become stronger, and it may last for a lot longer, become a lot more painful. And so where you're going through it alone, that impacts your quality of life. So that's why I think it's really important to talk about it. That's why I think it's important to support each other and reduce some of the stigma, because if you can take away some of the pain, if you can improve quality of life in any way, then it's worth it.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. And as you're saying that, the more you talk about it, you feel better. And it's so interesting because it took me straight away to sometimes you'll get a phone call or you'll just want to call someone and vent about something.
Exactly.
I don't want a solution, I just want to vent about it. And after you've done venting, you somehow feel like a lift.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I see that. Thank you for sharing that. And then so my other question to you is, what are some common myths and misconceptions about mental health? I think this is a big one.
Yeah. So every community, every culture, every language has misconceptions or ways to describe mental health. So some of those are not misconceptions. It's just a way to describe mental health. And some communities have, so it's different for every community. So for the diaspora from Africa, which I think is what we're focusing on, I hear a lot about spirituality, that mental health is a curse, or mental illness or mental symptoms is a curse. And I think in the professional community, we are talking about mental illness as really, or mental crisis as the most strong symptoms, right? And mental health is where you're trying to be as well as possible, and mental wellness or mental resilience is for everyone, right? You're not having so many symptoms. So anyway, the stigma and the misconceptions that I hear a lot from the African diaspora community is that it's a curse, that this will go away if there's ritual or there's prayer or there's lots of spiritual connection. And that this is because of someone or a family or someone's fault or something that someone did. And I think that it can prevent someone from getting help. It can add a lot of shame, and people struggle to know where to go, especially after moving to the United States. Because if that's your only option, then you may not have the priest, or you may not have the pastor, or you may not have the ritual options if that's your only way of supporting or finding a solution or finding healing. So it really limits options if that's the only thing that someone's aware of that can help.
Yes. And it's funny that you say that, because even it spreads even like more than just the mental health. I have seen, communities where maybe a child was born with deformities, and it's also blamed on something that ancestors did or someone did, and it's a curse. And it's just, I don't know. We just need to get more information, more awareness to those communities for sure.
Yeah. The way someone copes with the events of their life are also related to how much they have people who can support that thing, right? So if the child has deformities or genetic something is happening, and there's not so much access to healthcare, or there's not so much understanding about developmental disabilities, or you have to travel 4 hours or 6 hours or out of country to receive the social support, then being alone, hiding that person inside the house, that's the option, right? So when we can have more support, understand things in a different health way, or talk to a geneticist or talk to someone who's really aware of how that's connected and the patterns that they see with other children who are similar, then that opens up a lot of options for healing and for that person's quality of life.
Wow. Absolutely. You kind of almost answered my next question, but I'll still ask it anyway. So how do we as a society help break this stigma?
I think it's important to not blame each other. And it's not add those other explanations for why something happened. When somebody feels blame, then they're not wanting to seek help. And they don't know where to go, and they don't know what kind of conversations to have. And so much of the mental health symptoms can be related to how much support that we feel. You said, how can we as a society make this better? And there are things that we can understand from people's experiences that impact how much stress they feel, or how much symptoms of emotions that they feel, or how much they'll be able to cope with the things that are happening to them. But there's preventative behaviors that we can all take part in. So normalizing the conversation, maybe someone's having a really hard time, but also for every one of us, there's ways to have healthy behaviors that impact the mind and the body, and then the way we cope with stress. So those environmental things that we can do, our own situation, that helps everyone when we normalize the conversation. We take away the blame.
Wow. That's powerful. What are some of those examples of those environmental situations that we can do to help normalize?
Simple things that are available no matter where you are, but things that you control about your own life. So making sure you're drinking enough water and staying hydrated during the day, because your body is made up of so much water. Your brain also is made up of water, right? So we need to keep ourselves hydrated. We need to make healthy food choices. So healthy food choices are also, food is medicine. A lot of people will acknowledge that food is medicine. So whole food, fruits and vegetables, foods made from scratch, not so much packaged foods, things that are not high in sodium, not high in sugar, not high in the saturated fats or the fried foods. Keeping our body as fresh and healthy with the food that we eat really makes a difference in how we feel. Exercise. So you can cope with stress by exercising. You don't have to go to the gym. You can take a walk around your block when you're feeling extra stressed. I don't know how much we want to talk about brain science, but any way that you move your body from one side to the other side affects your brain and coping function. So the actual way that you move your one side of your body and the other side when you're walking does something to your brain. Just like cardio exercises, moving super fast helps you cope with the stress, helps you move that stress out of your body. There's some mental health researchers who say that the experiences that you have are stored in your body. So when you're starting to feel the muscle tension, when you're starting to feel the way that your body is feeling the stress that you have or the experiences that you have to get it out somehow. So exercise can be a really great way to help your muscles move that tension, move that stress out of your body.
Wow.
So I could go on, sleep, and making sure that you're connected to your health providers, making sure that you have social connections, trying to practice things that challenge you during the day, activities that you enjoy. I mean, we all know that friends are really important, but just having conversations that are healthy with other people, even if you don't tell them all of your deepest, darkest secrets, does something to your brain, does something to your stress, helps you relieve things. So there's lots of simple, maybe it's not so simple, you have to actually intentionally put it in your schedule, in your routine, but ways that you can control in your own life. So I think that helps reduce the stigma when we say mental wellness is for everyone. And whether you have symptoms that are really difficult to deal with, or you're trying to manage the stress from your work, we can all do these things as prevention.
Wow, I love how you say mental wellness is for everyone. I love that. And I just learned something new today. So how you move, actually, it depends, so technically what you're saying is, let me stumble over my words here, but meaning when you're walking, you should intentionally make sure that you're swinging on both sides.
Well, you have your arms moving, right? You have your arms moving, you have your legs moving. But there are certain types of therapy where moving your eyes back and forth helps your brain and the two sides of your brain reconnect and process those memories.
Wow.
So in using that same strategy, helping your body move in both sides intentionally, I mean, you're just going on a walk around the block, but you know now that it has some mental health impact. That's why you feel so good after you're back.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, after this interview, I am going for a walk.
We can all go for a walk. Yes. Whenever you're listening to this, go for a walk after this.
Absolutely. Can you elaborate just a little bit more about, some of the stigmas?
I think it's important to say that just like the body is holistic, the things that affect your mental health from the environment is also much bigger than just that person. So a person's mental health can be affected by their genetics. So the people who go before and the health of those people from before, or the traumatic stress that those persons experienced and carry then in your body, or maybe never healed from. It can also be affected by the politics in the community, or the discrimination that a person faces, or their whole community faces. How much access there is to basic services, basic food, basic other healthcare things, and all of those environmental factors are affecting the person's mental health, are affecting the way that they interact in their relationships. And relationships can cause experiences that then affect mental health. So it's never just one thing, and it's never just one person's fault. It's never just that specific way, because we also know that people who experience really, really, really difficult things can experience a tremendous amount of growth and a tremendous amount of success. And the way they cope with those things in their life, or how that changes themselves to have success or understanding in the future, really is amazing and inspirational and helpful for their whole community, the way that they use the experiences that have happened to them to grow, to change, to make the world a better place. So it's never one thing leads to another thing, but there also shouldn't be so much blame and so much stigma that says, of course, it has to be this curse, or it has to be this one thing, or it's that family's fault, because we're all affected by the environment, and we're all affected by nature, and we're all affected by the things that happen in this world. And so we can't forget about talking about those things.
Wow. I also like that approach, because now you're making us look at it as a bigger picture. It's not just one thing that happened to you. It could be a number of things, and it could still continue happening depending on what other environmental factors come into play.
Exactly.
Wow. So.
And there's hope, right? Just because something happened to you or your family or your community doesn't mean that that's the end.
Hope.
Hope.
That's the biggest message.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like to let your audience know, or just along the lines of, mental wellness, mental health, that I haven't asked you, but you would, you feel like it's important to share?
So I think we're all listening to this because we care about it personally, but we also care about the people around us. So I think if you're listening to this and you think, oh, I'm really actually worried about that person, probably you're worried because they're going to you first, right? They know that you're a trusted person. But what I would say is, this is really heavy. You don't have to go alone and do this alone. And you shouldn't be promising secrecy for that person. Sometimes people would say, I'm trusting you with this information, and I don't want you to tell anybody else. But you, as a person who've heard it, you can't carry something so heavy all by yourself. So some things that you can say is, I care about you too much to keep this kind of secret.
Wow.
You really need help, and I'm here to help you get it when you're ready, right? And I'm happy to listen to you, but there's people who are especially trained in what you're asking for, and I want to help you connect with that person, or I want to go with you, or can we do this together? Also, with the stigma, sometimes we think something's going on, but we're not sure we want to be the person to hear it. But the way you ask the question is really important. So if you say, well, you're not really struggling, are you? Then the answer is no, because that person doesn't want to they already know that you want no for an answer. So if you're looking for how to actually help somebody, keep your questions neutral so the person can say yes or no and both are okay.
Wow. So don't try to smooth it out with like.
Well, then you're hiding and then you're increasing the isolation and you're increasing the blame. But you can help someone connect. You can help go together. You can help make it normalized, or help them know what to do, or find someone else who can be just as supportive if that person can go with and you can't. So I would say don't try to do it alone. It's too heavy to do alone. So it might not be now. It might be that you have to have the conversation over some time until the person's ready. But you don't have to carry the burden alone.
Wow. And you don't have to promise secrecy. That's huge.
But saying it out loud, right?
Yeah.
So I care about you too much to keep this kind of a secret, instead of being in a place where you've already promised secrecy and now you don't know what to do about it. Because you don't want to go behind their back. If you can go together, that's better, because you don't want to betray the trust. But there's ways that you can phrase the conversation that still express that you care about that person. And that's why you're asking them to seek support.
Wow. Eye-opening. I'm just learning so much. Wow.
And it might be that you have to try more than once. And so it's okay to try more than once. It's okay that if the first person that person talks to doesn't get it, this system is really complicated and finding support is really difficult at times. So it's a journey. The whole life is a journey. So don't give up if it's just once.
And I feel too that if I was in that position, just hypothetically speaking, and I'm coming to you and I'm telling you, hey, don't tell anyone, but this has been happening to me, I have anxiety or I'm depressed or whatever, and you give me that such of a response, to me, I feel like it will justify that whatever is happening to me is not okay, and that there could be some help out there, and even you see it, my confidence.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, this is a big deal, right? Even if you say this is a big deal, which I can feel that you're really struggling with this thing, and you don't have to struggle alone. There's available support for you. Let's find it together. I'm here for you. We can still have a relationship, but I want you to know that you need more than just me. I'm not going to be able to be the one to meet all the needs that you're asking for. So let's find some support together.
I like that, because I've always struggled with how do you transition the conversation from a personal level to, hey, this might be a good time to find someone else that's more qualified in that field. But if you're putting the words that way, then it would make it a little bit easier.
Yeah. People want to be heard, and there's a lot of power in listening, but it can be really overwhelming for the person who's listening and feels like, I don't know what to do. I'm really worried and I don't know what to do, and now I feel all this pressure on myself. And that's why we have trained professionals. That's why we have mental health people who study the mental health field, so they know what else to add and what kind of skills to try. And for other people who are going through a similar situation, they can add some experiences that have been helpful for those other people.
So speaking of professionals, what can you tell someone out there who's probably struggling or going through, something, but they haven't decided yet if maybe this is the time to see a professional, or maybe I still need to talk to my confidant about it. But what can you tell that person that, hey, this is the point that you can come to a professional, and what are some of the things that professional can offer that person that you can share with them so they have an idea of, oh, okay, so if I go to a professional, I can expect.
I think it's normal for everyone to have periods of life when they're struggling, and periods of life where things aren't easy or they're not sure what to do next. And in any of those times, it can be helpful to seek someone with more experience and someone who can guide you in that situation. For mental health, it's a good idea to talk with a therapist or talk with your primary care doctor when the emotions that you're feeling or the thoughts that you're having or the way that your motivation is functioning gets in the way of the goals that you're trying to achieve for your life. So when you've noticed that you can't get out of bed in the morning, but you really want to try to keep your job, or you're trying to sleep at night, but these thoughts are just swirling around in your head and all of a sudden you can't even function, you know, or you're struggling to reach what you want to do and you need some extra support related to your emotions, your motivation, your energy levels, that's a good time to talk with your doctor or find a therapist. So doctors can make those referrals to therapists. Doctors sometimes are willing to provide medications if they feel like your symptoms are related to something that's going through in your body. And therapists are available with or without a doctor's note. So if you don't want to see your primary care doctor and you think this is related to something that's going on in my mind or my emotions or related to mental health, a therapist is available just by calling them up and saying, I really want to talk with somebody and I really want to start exploring what this is related to and how to move forward so that I can be successful in whatever I want for my future.
Wow. And is there a level that if I'm going through something, is there a level that I have to reach to know that, okay, now it's a good time to go see a therapist? Or can I see a therapist even just at the beginning of whatever I'm going through or I'm feeling?
A therapist would see you.
Either way.
Either way. So
it doesn't have to get really worse for you to be like, okay,
no. And a therapist can continue to be helpful even after the worst of it is past, for continued maintenance, for reminders, for talking through situations, problem solving. So some people don't go see a therapist because they don't know what to expect. You know, a therapist is probably going to start talking with you with a lot of questions to fully explore what is related to something else. You know, you say that you're struggling with sleep, for example, and they might explore, you know, how you're sleeping, the environment that you're sleeping, how long this has been happening in your life. When did it start and what was going on in your life at the time when you noticed that it started? So there may be a lot of questions at first. The therapist will decide with you what's the most important part of it. Like, what do you want to try and solve first? What's really affecting your life? And make a plan. And then try something. Try to learn some new skills. Try to explore something through talking. And then reevaluate. Did it work? Should we try something else? There's lots of options. So we try one thing, then we see what happens, try something else. Is it getting better? Maybe something else is more important to you then after you've reduced some of the pain that you're experiencing. And so that's the kind of process that a therapist uses, to start with one thing and move to something else. But it's based on what the person feels like is most important in their life. So they'll go with you like a guide or a coach or a really great friend who's not a friend. A really great friend who's more like a professional.
Who's not going to tell someone else.
Yes, exactly. You can explore it privately. Or they'll advocate for you, right? So you find out that this is affecting your life a lot more than you thought. And your therapist, if you want them to, can find services, extra services, or add their opinion if it helps change something that makes your life easier, makes your services easier, or finds you support in the future. So it can be a lot of things. It can be problem solving. It can be healing. It can feel like conversation. It can connect you to other things or help you understand what is it that I really wanted.
Wow. I am so glad that you shared that with me, because, so am I right to say that when you go to a therapist, you don't expect results right away, like today or tomorrow, because expect some discovery time to get to understand each other and get to that level where it's like, okay, now we found something that works for you.
Yeah.
Wow. So don't give up.
What happened to you happened over time, right? So you made a point about how you can't expect something to change right away. Maybe for some people, they only want a couple of short meetings with a therapist, and then you're really worried. Then you're really looking for short skill building. But maybe you find out that this is related to something else in your life, and so therapy can be really directed by the person who thinks that it's most important. But what happened to you happened over the course of a long time. And so to find a solution and to find full healing, or healing that is more long lasting, may take a long time. Just like exercise. You don't start exercise and then the next day you run a marathon. At least most people don't. You probably have to train for a long time, and then eventually you run a marathon, as that's part of your goal.
Very true.
So it really depends on what you want out of therapy. For someone who's never been to therapy before, we've started to explain therapy kind of like a tree. So when you're first meeting your therapist, they may explore the roots of the tree, and you may have some things as part of the roots that didn't go well, and that's part of your childhood, that's part of your upbringing, that's part of your ancestry, or the things that are affecting you from before you had so much control over your life. But if you have healthy roots, then you have a healthy tree. Maybe you have mostly healthy roots, and then some things over here are affecting the way the tree grows this way. Or your tree's growing up and the trunk is what's really the value in your life, the things that you value the most. The branches are the things, the expression, your success, the things you choose. And so therapy can focus on part of the tree, or look at this particular part, or maybe the roots is what you talk about, depending on which part needs healing or which part's affecting something else.
Wow. I like the way you painted a picture of a tree, and as you're talking, I was just following you through following this tree, and then so the therapist is the one who's going to help you identify which part of the tree you're walking
is
on,
connected to something else. So maybe somebody doesn't want to talk so much about their past or the trauma from before, and depending on what the goal of what they want out of the relationship is, maybe some skills can be helpful for coping in the moment. But if there's never any healing on the roots part of the tree, or healing from the past, or healing from those things, then you may still have part of your life affected by that topic. And then it's your choice about what time or when it feels important to explore that for full healing, or for increased healing. Maybe there's never complete healing, but you can find a lot of relief.
Wow. It just shows how complex this subject really is. You can't just fix the leaves and expect the trunk and the roots to be okay.
The body is holistic.
That's the word.
Yes, the body is holistic. So it's not just the brain, because the brain is connected to the rest of the body. And so these healthy behaviors, of course, they're healthy for other parts of your life too, because your mind's not disconnected.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And before I let you go, if I could hold you here all night, I would. So if someone's watching or listening and they're truly inspired by any part of the message that you've shared today, or someone is really struggling and going through it, what kind of encouraging message or just advice would you have for such a person?
Yeah. So I've talked about what to do when you're worried about somebody else. So maybe I'll talk about a different part to answer your question. What I really care about is how can we create this in our community? How can we keep helping each other in our community? So if you're listening to this and you thought, I didn't even know what therapy was before this, but maybe I'm a really great listener and I would want to do that for a profession someday. That's great. Let's keep talking. Let's create a group of people that's talking about how to make change in this area, how to blend approaches so that we can find something that people can grasp and understand, no matter what kind of cultural background that they come from. And so that we can increase access and we can increase support and reduce the stigma. So LSI can continue to be a place for internships or job shadowing or conversations, resources, support for questions. This is really complicated to find support and solutions. And so let's keep the conversation open because we won't be able to do this alone. We won't be able to do this without each other. And it's too important to stay silent.
Wow, absolutely. I could not agree more. Let's keep the conversations open. I love that. And then so if someone wants to get a hold of you, maybe they want to get started on this journey, how would they go about getting a hold of you?
So you can reach out to Lutheran Services in Iowa or LSI, and my connections can be through the front desk. Maybe that's the easiest way. Just walk in and ask for a therapist referral. Our website has an intake form, so people can make referrals directly for therapy or for other services. And then all of our contact information is there too. I won't repeat it because that's so many numbers and nobody wants to write down letters, but those may be easy ways to connect with us.
Perfect. So, as a parting shot, before I know I've said before I let you go 3 times now, but just as a parting shot, is there something that I did not ask you all throughout this interview that you feel like it's important and you really don't want to leave this chair until you've shared with someone?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about what to do, how to trust someone, what kinds of things to share. So let's go there.
Okay.
When you are worried about somebody or you're trying to figure out how can I share something but I'm not really sure I want to share all the details, or I don't want to know, I'm not sure if I can trust where this is going to go, or I'm not really sure about privacy. What does this privacy thing really mean? It can be helpful to talk about symptoms. So instead of my sister's acting so crazy, I really am trying to tell the doctor about how crazy she's acting. The doctor doesn't know what that looks like. So it can be really helpful to talk about what it actually appears to be. How do you observe it with your eyes? She hasn't slept in 3 days. She's not eating anymore. She sits alone in a dark place. Is much more descriptive and helps the doctor really know what's going on so that they can find the next step or find the therapist, the friend who you're going to. So,
wow. I cannot believe we almost closed that piece out. Because to be honest, I feel like that it actually is the beginning of breaking the stigma. Instead of allocating titles real quickly, like, hey, my sister is crazy.
Right.
No, my sister hasn't slept in 3 days.
Right.
Or describe what situation is going on.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
Sorry,
wow,
we left that
wow.
to the end.
Yeah, we saved the best for last.
That's the whole part about continuing the conversation. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to talk about.
Absolutely. So Sarah, again, thank you so much for having this conversation. Thank you so much for being that brave leader in our community to come out and start having these conversations and just sharing that, you are a professional. This is the kind of services that you provide. This is how holistic you view the situation. And this is how a therapist can help you navigate through that. I think that is powerful. I think it's also powerful for people to share their own journeys and their own struggles, but I think it's even more powerful if we can combine that with an actual professional.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I cannot wait to continue having this conversation.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Well, everyone who's watching or listening back home, if this message spoke to you or someone that you know, please share with them. We have a whole series just dedicated to mental health because we believe this is a very important subject that really truly needs to be openly discussed in our society so we can all help in breaking the stigma. Until next time, have a wonderful day.